start by introducing myself. My name is Bree Retzlaff, and I'm the Community Manager with Accelerate Okanagan. I wanted to say thank you all for taking the time to be here tonight and enjoy our Women in Tech panel. I first wanted to start by telling you a little bit about Accelerate Okanagan. We're a nonprofit that helps technology companies get started and grow within the Okanagan Valley. We do this through community resources and building, as well as through mentorship programs. So if you're interested in any of that, I can give you some more details afterwards. We are really excited to be hosting Women in Tech Unplugged as part of Women in IT Week. Thank you to the Women in Leadership Foundation for leading this initiative. Please feel free to join us on the conversation on Twitter this evening using the hashtags AO Unplugged and hashtag WomenInITYLW. The signs are around here, so you can see those hashtags. This Thursday, we will also be hosting another Women in Tech event with Crompton. So on May 19th from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Exchange. Feel free to come and attend. It's called Women in Tech Unwind. So we hope to see you guys there. There will be wine. We also wanted to give a special thank you to Streaming Cafe and NHP from our AO team. Over the last few years, we have really enjoyed being able to host our Unplugged events here, and we're really sad to see them closing their doors and moving on from this space. But we are excited to get to continue working with you guys on your next endeavors. So thank you so much for being our host. And so now I would like to pass it on over to our moderator for our Women in Tech panel, Judy Bishop. So Judy is an executive in residence at Accelerate Okanagan and is a very well-known BC tech industry advisor. I'm learning a lot of fun facts actually being up here tonight chatting with Judy. So if you're looking for some interesting stories, definitely chat with Judy afterwards. But I really wanted to pass it over to you guys, and so I hope you enjoy the discussion here tonight with these amazing women who are really leading the way in tech.
Thanks, Brie.
Thanks.
So, Corey, this is live, correct? No stories are going to be told then. So, welcome, everyone. As Bree mentioned, I'm an executive in residence with Accelerate Okanagan. I have about 150 years of experience in the tech sector. Oil of delay, I'll tell you later how I do this. So, I think that's why I was asked to do this. Also, I'm just a girl who can't say no. So here I am. And I'm really looking forward to pulling some of the information and conversation out of these esteemed women. This is Women in Technology Week. Why do we need a Women in Technology Week? Don't know. We have one. Let's take advantage of it, and let's talk about a few things that matter. So we're unplugged, apparently. I don't quite know where that came from, but I think we're pretty supercharged, so let's see what we can do. So welcome to the thousands of people out there watching our live stream, or maybe just your relatives. I'm not sure. What are we doing tonight? Well, I'm going to introduce the women to my right, and then we're going to kick off a discussion. But what are we going to talk about? Well, we could talk about I'm just keeping notes because I want to make sure I stay on track. We could talk about all the obstacles to women in the tech sector. We could talk about that. Or we could talk about how there's discrimination and sometimes sexual harassment in the technology workplace. We could talk about that. Or we could talk about why there's so few women in technology management. But you know what? We're not going to do any of that stuff. None of that stuff's going to happen. Why? Because we're going to talk about possibility and power and what we can do. Mm-hmm. And this isn't a rah-rah sisters got it all together. No. This is fundamental, factual. We know many things that we do not deploy in our work lives. We have power we don't bring to bear. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of power we do bring to bear, but sometimes we're a little quiet. We keep our fire hidden. So I'm going to take that tack in a couple of the conversations. Focusing on the negative just brings more negative. For that reason, we're not going to do that. We're going to, I think, talk about how women are differently capable and what should be built upon, what should be encouraged, what should be added. I've told each of the women that they're allowed one technology horror story. One tech sector horror story. One thing that they can talk about where they've endured some problem or difficulty or harassment as a result of being female. Only one, because the rest is all about capability. And so it should be very interesting to hear what we hear. I'm going to make a quick personal statement. My own tech experience is deep and varied. I've gone from senior management to venture capital to currently I spend my time helping CEOs and founders build really valuable companies really fast so that there's massive amounts of cash and success at the door. We'll see if that works. I can honestly say I have never actively felt discrimination. I know that's amazing, but it's true. Now, a lot of guys tried to sleep with me, of course, but you're a woman, that happens. That could happen at the dry cleaner, that could happen in your doctor's office, that could happen anywhere. I don't even look at that as a factor. We know how to deal with each other's sexuality in a nanosecond. That's not on the table. What I think happened for me is I didn't know any better. Ignorance was bliss. I was one of the only women in my field at a senior level cranking it, just getting it done. I didn't have time to notice my gender, frankly. Just got it done. As one woman at Apple, who I became friends with, told me, she said, just wear a men's cologne. They'll never notice there's a woman in the room. And I thought, I laughed like you did, but if you don't mind, it doesn't matter. And that was my personal experience. And perhaps that and a healthy dose of assertiveness taught me to rise above the things that sometimes are a challenge for people. I don't know, but that has been my experience. So it's a bit ironic that I'm being asked to facilitate this panel. The last thing I'm going to say is, for me, finding gratitude and appreciation has always been the key to my personal resilience. I didn't feel limitations about being a woman because they weren't there, because I was just so damn grateful to have a high-paying job that let me rip, let me travel, let me think, let me work really hard. Ignorance really was bliss, but it was very profitable to me. So that's kind of my statement and my background and the lens through which I see so much of the work that I do today. So I'm now going to tell you a little bit about who's to my right. Because I have them in order, I'm going to first mention Karen Olsson, who is sitting in the middle. And I'm going to read the bio because they're darn good. They're really good bios, and I don't want to ad-lib them. Karen's an executive leader with big experience in growing high-tech startups. And she's focused a lot on recruitment and HR, operations management, and I didn't know this, investor relations. Over her not insignificant career, she's done some pretty compelling work and creative work in digital media production, and she worked at a not-for-profit focused on engaging more women in technology, so an appropriate panel member, and she has built a global technology recruitment practice. Locally, she's rocking it as COO of an industry leader that if you don't know about, you will hear lots about in the future. It's called Community Sift, and they're doing world-class software as a service product that we won't get into right now. So, Anne Drennan. Anne has an extensive background in animation, and can I say it spans more than 20 years? Can I say that?
Yeah.
Okay. She's had lots of diverse experience, some of which has included International Rocket Ship Limited, Vancouver Film School, Nerdcore Entertainment, I love that name, and Bardell Entertainment, which is a pretty significant player in its field. She now serves, and this makes me tired reading it, on a range of advisory boards, including Sheridan College Advisory Board, UBC Okanagan Advisory Board, the Okanagan Film Commission. Do you sleep?
No.
Creative BC, and the Okanagan College Advisory Board, yeah. So, like me, Anne has chosen to live in the Okanagan from Vancouver, and she wants to put her history and love for animation to good work here, and is doing so. And she's now developing the International Okanagan Animation Film Festival for 2017. Watch for it, go for it. Connie. Connie's an assistant professor of digital humanities and English. Awesome. At the Faculty of Creative and Critical Studies, UBCO. And she also directs the Humanities Data Lab, another one who doesn't sleep. She's also co-director of the Lesbian and Gay Liberation in Canada Project, associate director of the Digital Humanities Summer Institute, Research collaborator with the Yellow 90s Online. I gotta know what that is.
I have a good time.
I bet you do. And a researcher with Implementing New Knowledge Environments. Her work has appeared in many places, including collections with Victorian Review, 19th Century Gender Studies, Digital Humanities Quarterly, and others. We'll just keep it short. So I bow to these ladies. My experience is deep. Theirs is very deep. So I think you will have something to say. Yeah. So one of the things that always comes up is, where are the women? Where are the women in technology management? Where are the women in technology? Now I want to bust the myth that the women aren't out there. And I'm going to put this now to the panel to address that. Where are the women? Okay? And the best kept secret in technology companies is that women tend to hide their skills. They're usually the problem seekers, the dedicated workers, the brilliant engineers, the ones who make the projects rock. They're not usually blowing their own horn. So what I'm going to put to the panel is basically this. Is that why these women aren't considered for management positions? Because they're spending their time working on deliverables and they're so core to the projects? Or is it because they don't network up? Or because their own career development is second to the development of the team and the project they're on? Basically, are they under highlighting their own accomplishments? Because we know their male colleagues talk about their accomplishments. So why do you think there are fewer women in technology management positions? One of you can take it.
Hi, I'm Ann Denman. I'm with the Okanagan International Animation Festival. Actually, in animation, I don't, quite frankly, I know one producer that's male. So fortunately, in animation, it is very much heavy loaded with females in the strong executive positions. I think I don't want to make a sweeping statement, but I think it's because we're good communicators. We have learnt patience. We're brought up to be people pleasers. And so most of the time that doesn't work for us, but I think in crew situations, that hint of diplomacy really helps us achieve our objective. And tenacity. I think also being, I hate to say the fairer sex, but the sex that has been the most ignored, even by ourselves. I think we have to be responsible for ourselves. We fight harder now. Okay. Anyway, that's my opinion in animation.
Okay, good insight for animation.
Hi, I'm Karen Olsson. I'm the CEO of Community Sift. It's actually a really interesting question. I had an experience this week where I sat down to lunch with some of my team members. One manager a female, one manager a male. And I asked them the question, how do you think you're doing? And it was interesting that my female manager still claimed to feel that she felt like a bit of an imposter, that she, is it really her in this position? Does she have the skills? Does she question herself? And the male manager was like, yeah, I'm rocking it. So I still think that there's this, we still doubt ourselves. We still put ourselves in a position of, am I really capable? Can I really sit in this role and be successful? And I think we have doubt and how we're brought up as women. I think that's part of society and what happens to us.
Agreed.
I can't speak to it from a sociological perspective, but I can certainly speak to it anecdotally from what I see in our organization is the men are more willing to stand up and say, look what I've done, look what I can do, recognize me, and women are like, yeah, I got all this stuff done and I have more stuff to do, so I'm going to go do that right now.
So they're buried in the project and don't tell you how good they are.
Yeah. And by the way, my female manager is rocking it, like blowing it away in terms of what she has accomplished and where we believe she can go in the organization. And so I hope she's out there watching.
And her mother.
And her mother, yeah.
Well, Connie, you might have some perspective on what we're talking about then because of your studies.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I'm Connie Crompton, an assistant professor of digital humanities. And I mean, I feel like I'm like obsessed at the other end of the scale.
Right.
There's that, our students are graduating and they're like, going out into the world and there will never be another syllabus again and you won't know when the quizzes are coming and, are we preparing them adequately to, to sort of like launch into the work world. And I think, one of the things that the culture in general doesn't seem to tell young women is that, yes, you should hire your own brass band and have a trombone that marches about and says how great you are all the time. But also just, teaching young women to ask for what they want. Folks can only hire you to get started on that track towards, technology management or whatever you're interested in if they've heard of you. And I think quite often there are all sorts of people, both young men and women, who are doing excellent work that they kind of hide under a bushel. So, I think for us, one of the key things we're trying to do is to work with students to help them learn to have those, it's not even just self-promotion skills, but just the courage that it takes, and it's very anxiety producing, to introduce yourself to the people you want to work for. They'll only hire you if they know you.
They know.
Yeah.
So while while we see the 21-year-old male engineer tell you how he can reinvent a moonshot, the woman who's doing it in the back room isn't sure she's got it right. And I think that's very cultural, as you point out, Karen. And frankly, we're not going to solve any of that here. It's just I think that we have to remember that sociologically, societally, we only just got control of our fertility, let alone, really knowing how to use our power in a gender-balanced corporate and business world. So I think we're doing pretty well, but there's certainly some areas we're going to get our act together a lot better. So in my experience, there's two main ways to deal with the not fitting in, don't know if I should talk about my work so much. And one is if women commit to knowing their own mind and speaking it. And sometimes knowing your own mind is a difficult balance because you have to trust your instincts as well as trust your technical knowledge, which is why some women I've noticed who have a degree in engineering and an MBA only then feel capable of speaking out. But when they do, they're awesome. So I guess my point here is if you really know your stuff, you have to start learning how to trust your ability to speak out. And that kind of assertiveness I'm seeing, I have watched a shift in the young women I've mentored. I mentored a lot of young women. I probably had 5 a year for 20 years. And I've watched a shift in some of the really young women coming out of school. They're good, they're really good, and they know how to do their work, and they know how to speak about it now. So I personally have witnessed a big difference in what we're talking about. Even though it's still with us, it's a lot less. And so that's a great trend line. So I feel like Grandma Moses up here talking about this. The other part we've talked about that. The other thing I wanted to bring up, and I certainly see it in some of the companies that we work with, is sometimes, let's face it, companies are a dude fest, right? It's a dude fest. It's a bunch of young men. And suddenly you're the first or second woman to be hired into that company, maybe. Or you're the first coder who's female. It's kind of a big deal, and it's a bit of pressure on you. How do you deal with that, right? And so, because the dude fest is different. Males in a group behave like males in a group. Females in a group behave like females in a group. And let's face it, sometimes the interpersonal skill development in one group is not what it could be for the other group to feel accommodated and acknowledged. So even sensitive guys in those environments can be less than accommodating. So I wanted to maybe talk a little bit about if you're feeling like you're a young woman in your career and you're kind of in a pioneering situation, maybe the first coder in an all-male company, or maybe you're presenting to an all-male venture capital group, which is often the case. Any comments, any experiences you guys have had in this area? Karen, I know you're dealing with that right now.
It can definitely be intimidating. I mean, I actually often have to check myself before I walk into a room. If I know I'm going into a board meeting or I'm going into an investor meeting and it's all men around the table, I have to remember a couple of things. To be authentic, I am who I am. What I bring to the table is valuable, and I need to lead with that. It definitely has its challenges. I think once you are comfortable in your own skin and you are able to trust in things like your intuition, I do find that I do go on my gut a lot more probably than my co-founder, who is very analytical and goes into the depths and the details and spins every which way scenario of what could go wrong. And I'm often like, no, we just need to do this, and you need to trust me. And most of the time I'm right, so.
Yeah. If I can
But
add
do you believe you're right?
I believe I'm right.
I'm kidding. Anne?
I used to work in HR as well. Well, and when you run a company, you deal with HR. Anyway, first off, I always want to know what your blue sky is.
Right.
Blue sky means, of course, when it's Sunday night and you've had a couple glasses of wine and you're on the phone. See, I'm doing this, huh? Do you feel good? You're on the phone with your girlfriend and you're saying, "Oh yeah, I'm at school and you know what I really want to do? I want to be a director." This is the kind of stuff to hold on to.
Yeah.
Why say you want to be something you're not? Because there's different roads. Go on the road that you want. Mm-hmm. The only ingredient you need, and I mean the major ingredient you need, and I was talking to a colleague about this, passion is number one. Talent is second, I believe. Because you can water a rock long enough and something will grow. If you're passionate enough, and I've seen it. I've seen someone who's fabulous has made their education their occupation, and brilliant. I'm parroting what I just said when we were having our conversation. And brilliant, but they're a total pain in the ass. Mm-hmm. Bing. Then I've seen someone who's, but he gets along or she gets along with everyone. Problem solver, go getter, comes in at 8, leaves at 9, and I go, yes. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. This is what we want. I mean, this is your kick at the can. This is not a dress rehearsal. This is it. This is life. You chose art, technology, broadening the horizon of humanity. Sorry, I really dig what I do. Touche. Mm-hmm. Touche to your family for encouraging you to do it. So I honor you. So then, by doing that, your responsibility to yourself is fucking go for it. Thank you.
I feel inspired to try my hand at my garden again, which is mostly me watering rocks on the weekend and not a lot of show for it. I will persevere. I would say I feel like on the question of workplace culture and gender, mm-hmm. One of the things that I found very heartening is really realizing that there's actually more of a Venn diagram between the sexes, right? Than
yes.
Than sort of these sort of separate camps. I definitely have way more in common with white middle class men who are slightly anxious and wave their arms around a lot than I do with women living in rural outposts in Sudan. And so knowing that there is that sort of overlap, there's this sort of opportunity, I think, for the good men around us to be really excellent allies in the workplace, and that we can't assume that all men will sort of clique off together, and that there are lots of guys that you, I think, in workplace situations can talk to and say I'm having this challenge, or I recognize that you're a guy who's not not down with kind of bro jokes at men's expense, and that there are many good men out there who are interested in changing that culture. I think sort of in the same way that if you were a white person, you have probably had that experience where someone will come up to you at a party and be like, you're a white person, you'll like this slightly racist joke, and there's an opportunity there to be no, and just sort of push back. And I think there are lots of good men in the workplace too who are willing to do that for workplace culture. That's really heartening. Yeah.
I think it's important to say most men in the workplace
are
good. I mean, it's an incredible place to work in tech, and what what we're doing and what's happening, and I want to say good on men for leading the charge in this space of innovation, and more women should get on board, but there's nothing wrong with it being male dominated at this point.
So we do stand out because there's less of us. And because we stand out, we have an opportunity to teach each other as women and the men we worked with how to be better. Not just as males and females, but as people, frankly. I almost didn't agree to do this session because I am generally against women-only or men-only events or initiatives or sessions or talks. I typically won't do it. And the only reason I decided to do this was, well, I was talked into it, but also because I see an opportunity to say it, in a way, it doesn't matter. And if we teach each other how to behave, and if we're confident enough to be ourselves, male or female, we bring a very powerful set of skills to any company we're working with. And it doesn't matter whether we have ovaries or not, frankly. And companies need the power we have as women and as men. And more of them are getting enlightened enough to know that they need. And so having women elevated to middle management positions where they're given a chance to launch into running companies, like she does. Basically, you run the place, let's face it. Yeah. And so for that reason, people who, I'm going to use Karen as an example, people who come to the company and look upon it as a place to work will go, I can see a model here. This company gets it. So it becomes a retention tool as well. And I think we all agree that it isn't about gender, but there are some things about gender that matter, and we're talking about some of them here. One of the things I wanted to talk about was the areas of technology companies where I have noticed can be a ghetto for women. The R's. Sorry, guys. HRIRPR. Human resources, investor relations, public relations. Now, that's been my observation. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but quite often women think, oh, I'm working for a technology company, cool, I'll go into PR, and they will never be anything but the chick in the corner cranking out press releases. It's a horrible thing that happens to some women because they really want to do some great things in tech companies. They see it as an opener, and they get stuck in a corner. Has any of you noticed any of that?
I noticed that the last word is relations. So that's interesting because, again, we notice that women are good communicators. But yes, absolutely. I was the first woman in animation that I know of. Maybe there's a half a woman down the block. But in Vancouver, there was no one but groovy guys doing pictures of boobs and anything else that would freak you out. And then they'd go to the Cecil, which is a strip joint, at 11 o'clock, and by 2 they're drunk, and they'd come in and continue, and they thought that was just rocking. That was hardcore. It's changed. I kind of like the fact that it wasn't censored. Anyway, but for that reason, but I don't like the other part of it. I hear you. I hear you about the ghettoizing and girls on one side of the room and boys on the other. And again, I think we just have to encourage our sisters to push themselves ahead.
Is that still happening, or is it something that, have I got an outdated perception?
I think I'd say it's still happening. I have seen some male assistants, but there are fewer and farther between. Okay. That's what I love about technology is women got away from the secretarial role. My mom used to call it the pink ghetto, and she wouldn't allow me to learn how to type. She wouldn't allow me to have a Barbie doll, and no, I didn't wear a bra until I left home. She was probably one of Vancouver's first feminists, and as much as there were, I'm old. This was in the 60s. So it really made an impact, but I'm really glad for it. And mind you, I type like this still, but I'm really glad that I didn't get, I was taught about women artists as well. I went to a female doctor. My mom was steadfast on ensuring that we as young women, we meaning my sister and I, went. And my brother had to take ballet. He didn't like that. He was an avid hockey player. But I'm just saying, she was into gender busting. So yeah, I think we have to. Exactly. John loved that. Now he's a captain of a fishing boat. I think he didn't pursue his dream as a dancer. But I think that's still very clever, though, is to break the boundaries and to encourage each other to do that.
Okay, Karen, HRIRPR, is it still an issue?
I think it still happens. I think there's a comfort zone that people just, follow what's been done. But I'll kind of, I think, maybe turn it on its ear and say, I think some of the responsibility lays with companies. And one of my objectives in building the company that we are building is I don't want there to be gender barriers. And so when I'm hiring, I don't actually even want to know what gender somebody is. Like, I don't want to layer that on top of it. And I think organizations need to take the responsibility for opening up opportunities instead of creating the ghettos where, marketing's full of women, or, your operations or and even as I'm saying this, I realize, yes, our operations team is heavily female, but that said, we've hired our first female programmer. Our language and culture team and our client success is pretty equal. And we're really mandated to make sure that as we grow, women have the opportunity to raise up and have leadership roles. And I think just taking it back and to the fact that organizations are responsible for breaking down those barriers, along with the young women coming into organizations. Yep. And it goes back to believe in yourself, believe in what you're capable of, and stand up and be heard, and don't allow yourself to be marginalized.
So if someone's looking for a job in a company that's in HRIRPR, to use the terms I talked about, they really need to have their radar up to how progressive they are otherwise. Okay, that's good. And any comment?
That's like spot on. Too, especially for those of us who have these relative positions of privilege, but also of power, where we are kind of hiring people to learn to be, I think, a bit reflective about ourselves and then how we operate inside the organizations that we belong to.
Yeah.
I had a very almost like a shocking experience when I was working on a project with a group of friends, actually. So this is outside of academia, and one very butch friend, and I could tell that I was giving her the floor more and letting her interrupt a little bit more because she's super masculine, and I would have said to myself well, I don't think I do that with men and with men in my organization or with masculine people in my organization, but recognizing that I was letting it happen with Liz made me realize I think I don't do it with masculine men, but I may, and my colleagues may, and perhaps that's a thing as an organization we can talk about, rather than sort of putting it on young women who are just sort of starting out, to make it solely their problem. I think those of us who have that kind of power or privilege can leverage it to make a more level playing field. I think that's right on.
Yeah. Touche.
When I was asked to speak at SFU on what I thought were the most self-limiting things that we women do in companies, I focused on the 3 Ps, and I'm going to quickly throw it out there because I think it's kind of important. The first one is personalization, the belief that we're always at fault. It's different from taking responsibility. What happens is a lot of us, we should always take responsibility, but a lot of us figure everything that happens is because we messed up somehow. Like, he broke up with me because, I was a bad person, not he has no emotional maturity, or, they fired me because I did something wrong. No, they let you go because their money's running out. It's personalization. We tend to blame everything on ourselves. So number 1 was personalization. But that can actually be an asset. I'm going to throw it up to you guys to look at these 3 Ps and see where we can use them as women. The second one is pervasiveness. We tend to believe that anything that happens affects everything in our life. Everything is awesome or everything is awful. There's no middle ground. We do tend to do that as women. And the third one is permanence, and the belief that whatever happens that we're feeling is going to last forever. I tend to be more of a guy in the classic definitions. I don't tend to let things get to me, but I think I'll find a lot of my female colleagues do tend to feel like, oh, this is just going to be this way forever and I can't get over these feelings. So personalization, pervasiveness, and permanence.
I think you just summed up every argument I've ever had in my marriage.
Is Dave here?
No, but he's probably watching.
But these 3 aspects of emotional behavior underwrite an awful lot of what we all do, even if we don't want to admit that that's true. And it's true for men as well, but we women just have our own different flavor to it. So I wanted to throw the 3 Ps up, personalization, pervasiveness, and permanence, and say, what do you think? Are these things that we can use to be better and in our work worlds in tech companies which have clearly a very male side of them, or does it matter? Am I just talking trash here?
There's a couple mottos I have is don't take life personally. In other words, shit happens to everyone, so get over it. It's all relative. And don't apologize. Don't apologize for being strong. Don't apologize for, well, I just started out. I'm just graduated. Really be open to listening to yourself. And then the third thing is find a good mentor. But anyway, to address the question, it's great to be sensitive, but I think you have to steel yourself. I meditate. Steel yourself to get your ego out of the picture and just think of your objective, and maybe you can use that as a mantra when you go into work. But on the positive side of the scale, like I say, it's sensitivity.
All right.
I'm going to speak really personally. It's interesting that you bring those three things. I mean, those are probably the three things I struggle with daily. Not to take things personally in the workplace.
Yes.
It's always going to be like this. You know,
Yes.
those are challenges, and I think that it's really, really important that we dig in with those and tear them apart a little bit, because I think it gets in your way personally. And unless you're able to learn to take a step back from that and realize it isn't always going to be this way, you aren't responsible for everything that's happening, and it's really not your fault. And I think once you can be open and past those things, amazing things start to happen. But it's a journey. At least it is for me. And you know, there are still days when I want to bury my head in the sand, because it's overwhelming running a company and being responsible now for how many jobs that are on the line, and you do feel like, you know, if I make a mistake, or if it's everything to everybody, and you have to realize that it really isn't, and life goes on, and it's going to be okay, and all I can do is do my best, but I find it challenging daily to get past those things.
Yep. That's why I brought them up.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's heartening, of course, also knowing that like everyone suffers from them, so everyone else is also spending lots of time being introspective and not noticing what you're doing, because they're feeling very anxious about the stuff that, you know, they feel they have personally done wrong, and so they probably don't have time to notice when we drop the ball, or, you know, even when things aren't our fault.
Unless you're my co-founder, then
he notices all the things. I mean, one of the things that I was going to say that, you know, I always find very heartening too is, you know, having like one person who you can really like, you know, off vent all of that, you know, personal anxiety kind of stuff to, so that it doesn't touch you in the rest of the world. Having, you know, in our case for Profs, we, you know, spend 40% of our time teaching and then 40% of our time doing research. And I find like having a research partner who really cares if I can't get the servers up and running, or that I'm worried that I was too loud at a meeting or whatever, you know, means that I can say all that stuff out to her, and then it doesn't touch like the rest of the world. I was thinking like, oh, I bet you have that, you know, in a co-founder too, who notices everything.
If I may add, it's just what you do, Judy. You're a mentor. If you have someone who's had legs in the business, pardon the expression, legs in the business, and is of sound mind and can, no, just kidding, sound mind, and that you can really bounce things off, and
Not sure about that part.
and they'll just tell you the honest goods.
Yeah.
It's find yourself at least one sponsor, and I would say in every area of your life that you think is important. It's really it's a really smart thing.
I love that word sponsor, you know, so that you have, you know, mentors who can maybe help you see the lay of the land, but, you know, a sponsor is really somebody who will say, oh, I did hear about this opportunity, and I know just the woman for it, or I know, you know, and so, yeah, finding people who think of themselves as sponsors can really help open those doors. That's great.
So the last company I ran, it was mostly men, and I loved it because it was a great group of people. And I used to, when the guys would struggle with personal things, I would say, you can't check your humanity at the door. Be fully human, feel what's going on, and when shit blows up, it blows up, and come and talk to me. And they would, and I became the confessor, counselor, and on occasion, the one who fired their ass. Because I was both hard and soft at the same time. And that you can't check your humanity at the door is an important thing. Now, the pervasiveness, personalization, and permanence matters that I brought up earlier, everybody in this room is going to deal with one of these things in the next week in some form, right? And all of us, I got to tell you, as deep as my experience is, I still run into things and I think, am I not beyond this? Well, I might be beyond the depth of it, but it still gets you. And it's important to remember we women do have an opportunity to help the men in our environments maybe get 5% more in touch with the emotional matters they're dealing with. And they have a chance to help us man up and, suck it up a little bit. I mean, we really do have an opportunity to give each other strengths in areas where we maybe forget that we have those strengths. And I wanted to bring up, as not to close the conversation, but to bring it to a place of action. Each of you maybe talk a little bit about what you think our major strengths as women are that we can bring to an organization and take everybody to a higher level. In essence, a collective strength. Not to be too soft and mushy about it, but there's things we can do as women that elevate us and our male colleagues in a way that's quite wonderful if we get into it and we really put our minds to it. So one of you can pick it and run with it.
Oh, gee.
No challenge.
Yeah, thanks. Just to talk, what I have to offer is I'm really passionate about what I do. I
didn't notice that.
No, I know, I hide it a bit. But no, I really get jazzed. I love it. I love art. I think that's what I can bring to a group, is my enthusiasm. I also take a lot of risks, calculated risks, but risks. And you are the friends you keep. Remember that. Stick with good people. Anyone who's negative in your life, bing. Yeah. Seriously, it's like it's waste of time. And hopefully they'll become enlightened because you just don't put up with that.
Okay.
It's like a cancer. But and I suppose in communication, call a spade, drag someone in and say, what do you mean by that? Mm-hmm. Have those heartfelt, intimate conversations that you clear the air. So I think that's what women can bring to the table.
Okay. That's excellent. Next.
I think about the experience I'm having now and the growth that our organization is going, and I find myself a lot of time as the reality check. So I'm the sounding board. Yes. We have a very ambitious goals on the table, and a lot of times we have a founder who's running super fast and not listening, and I do think that I get to be the voice of reason and provide that grounding that wouldn't be there otherwise. And in that, not to be cliche, but it's yin and yang, right? Mm-hmm. We are fairly typical in our gender roles in the organization, and I think because of that, because of that balance, we've been able to grow from 10 to 42 in the space of 8 months. And there's no end in sight. Like we are on the rocket ship and we're going, and it's because we are together and we have those strengths and checks and balances with one another. Yeah. And I definitely think communication is key, and the people factor. Yeah. I care deeply about the people who are in our organization. Not that my co-founder doesn't. It's just different how it's manifested. Mm-hmm. And so, the fact that my approach is, I think, much more nurturing, to use that word.
I was waiting for somebody to use that word.
I think it's the reality. I mean, I have 3 kids, I'm married, and I approach that the same way I approach the business. It's meant to grow and flourish, and I want to water it and feed it and see it take off and be successful, and that's how I approach it. And I think that has given the organization the strength it needed to go forward.
Yeah, that's good insight.
I'm totally going to risk being like the ornery panel member who doesn't really answer the question, but I think only because I don't know that I
I'll get you after school.
Oh, right, that's right. Yeah, look out for me out back. That I don't know that I actually have a lot to offer as a woman per se, but one of the things that I found very heartening and it touches on, I think, a lot of the issues we've talked about here, is sort of that better living through history. So this is like the humanities side of digital humanities, where I think we, say we have like, young women who say, oh, well, I can't go into computer science because that's just like not for me because women aren't good at that sort of thing.
You slap them when they do that?
No, I encourage them to take my history of computing courses, where, computers, back when that described people, were women, up through the 40s. Building machines, like, that was super high status. Are we going to, like, have computers that have, like, mercury delay lines, or are we going to go with, we invented transistors, like, the hardware was the stuff, and the, like, not super high status work was programming, right? Was, like, and so that went to computers, who were women, who had taken the typing courses, and we kind of, I think we forget that women are perfectly capable of doing those things, and I think too when we think about how things have changed over time. One of the other things I know you had mentioned that I work on a gay liberation in Canada project, and there we've got the opportunity to learn about like lesbian separatists and gay liberationists whose like total approach to gay liberation is completely different from like gay rights movements now. And I think like understanding history and how we got here can be a good way to show ourselves that actually we're capable of lots of things, that women used to do a lot of this stuff, used to lead lots of things, and that we can sort of forget if history in our mind's eye kind of stops with like the 1950s and kind of leave it to Beavery kind of things. But so I don't know that I like have a lot to offer as a woman per se, because I'm only the kind of woman that is kind of possible now. I would have been a different one in 1945, I'm sure.
So it's about self-perception then.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, interesting. So money. Money. The topic that almost no one feels comfortable talking about. I love talking about money. I can talk about it all day long, and that's partly why I loved being in venture capital, because it didn't bother me to blow big numbers around. And I gather I'm a bit of a weirdo that way. In fact, the VCs, venture capitalists that I've worked with, have said, "Wow, you're fine. Well, this is unusual." I'm like, yeah. So how much are we going to cut on this deal? So one of the things that I've always noticed with women in business, period, because when I was at KPMG, the big accounting firm, I got to see quite a large assortment of behaviors with women in business, is that we just don't seem to be comfortable talking about money and how much we're worth and how much our companies are worth, and generally money in general. It's the ultimate measurement. It's all about the dough. My motto has always been, get the money, right? So in technology, there's a lot of money at stake. Whether it's investment, whether it's salaries, whether it's big cash outs. And I have to say, I think, speaking as a Vancouverite who's transplanted to Kelowna, you guys have no idea the wave of fabulous companies that are going to cash out in the next few years. Oh my God. Like, keep your eyes open. Stuff's happening here. It's awesome. Just side note, back to the topic at hand. In talking about money, why do you think it's the last frontier for so many women? They can talk about power and get into management positions and be absolutely comfortable and fearless and so many other things, but they just kind of break down when it comes to the numbers. And I know it happens a lot. Or maybe I'm the only one in the panel here who has that experience. I don't know. I want to throw that one up there for consideration.
I think there's that like learning to negotiate your own worth, which I think like the culture doesn't teach us in general. And so that too is like, finding a sponsor who knows how to do that.
But is it learning to negotiate it? Is it being entitled to say, this is the value and I'm holding my position on that? Is it one or the other, or is it both?
And that, I think people should read their workplace culture. Do I work in a place where women have been successful doing that before? And if they haven't, are there some cultural shifts that I can help, precipitate? Are women who do that very pushy, and men who do that, they show super promise? You may work in that kind of place, but hopefully not. But I think the money is a final frontier, but it's also the thing that people peg value to. If they don't really know what you do, but they know you're expensive, then you're probably really good, right? So I think like it does. It does
Okay,
matter.
good insight. Karen, do you have any thoughts on that, Karen?
Money is a hard one.
I know.
I read Lean In, and in there Sheryl Sandberg talks about when she was offered the job from Facebook from Zuckerberg, and she says basically that she wanted to leap at the opportunity and was advised to go back and ask for more money, and she was a bit aghast at that. It's like, what? It meets Facebook, right? Of course I want this. I'm going to take whatever they offer, but they gave her the advice. I believe it was her husband said, no, don't take the first offer. Go back. And so she did, and she negotiated and got more money, and Mark was like, yeah, sure, no problem.
Didn't ask for enough.
She didn't ask for enough, right? And then even recently, we interviewed somebody for a role, and I decided to take the mentorship moment with her when I said, so what's your salary expectation? Oh, well,
Exactly.
you don't have to pay me. You don't have to pay me. I'll just come work for you. And it's like, no. I think she said, I'll take 40,000. I'm like, you're going to take $40,000 for this job?
taxes?
Yeah. It's like, no, you're not. You're going to take 50,000 at the very minimum. And the point is we undersell ourselves. And I don't know what the answer is to why we do that, whether culturally we're told we shouldn't value ourselves or society doesn't value ourselves. But I know I'm guilty of it too. I mean, we went through a financial raise and did some debt financing as well. And we got some great terms on the table, and I thought, screw it. I'm going back and asking for better terms. And I took a page out of Sheryl Sandberg's book and went back and said, no, this is the rate I want. This is what we're going to get. And I think, the bank was a little bit like, oh, okay. And they said yes. And so, ended up saving $100,000 a year for the company. So,
Yeah, that's very good.
I was happy about that one.
Well done.
You're asking for a raise when?
Oh, well, you are on our board, Judy, so we need to discuss things.
I would,
Oh, dear.
first off, I'd look at I would do your research, look at the wage bands that are on, when you just type in Google and your position and for your area. And then I would go 10K higher than what you think you're worth. I'm talking an administrative executive position, because people in, my business, artists are all paid the same. There is a wage band for men and women. There is no because I would kill them.
Perfect.
But you also, if they can't meet it, then just say, okay, percentage. There's more than one way to get paid. But I'd say first stick to your guns, and which I did, and I got paid exactly what I asked for.
Right on.
And it was a very handsome salary. So, and I worked hard, because I don't go, oh, let's see, I'm going to be worth 50K of work. No, I'm going to give you $150,000 worth of work. I'm going to work 7 days a week. And that's what I do, still do to that day, because I know I'm worth it. Plus percentage of the profits.
And you love your job.
And I think it's Ding Dong Dope Deluxe, and you can quote me.
Well, that's some interesting insights about money and power. I still think that women in technology, there's so much money floating around in tech companies, whether it's raising money or in terms of salaries, that we have to learn how, as people, not just as women, to be more entitled. And, some of the young men I've counseled, the same thing. I was like, shut up and let them offer. So to your point, I didn't know that story, and it's a very good one. I'm going to give you guys a quick little story, because my own self, it was a long time ago, and I was being recruited by a venture capital firm to take on the director of marketing position for a new company that was a restart of an old company. So we knew it was going to do fairly well. And I went in, and I'd had the flu, and I wasn't feeling great. And I sat there with the CEO chatting, and he threw an offer on the table, and I actually felt like throwing up, because I had the flu. I could barely hear what the man was saying. And I said, you know what, can we have this meeting again tomorrow? I have to go and think about this. Mainly I have to go and hurl. But I wasn't going to let him see that. And I was sweating, and it was terrible. It was a really bad moment. And he said, of course, we'll chat tomorrow at 11 o'clock. I came in the next day. He offered me $60,000 more than he had offered me the day before. He thought I had to go think about it. Now, what is the lesson here?
Never take the first offer.
Get the flu before you go in for it. But, you know, I ended up earning $180,000 a year when I would have had $120,000.
Yep.
So, and it was not even the senior role, and, you know, I became the chief marketing officer and had huge amounts of stock, and we took the company public, and I bought some shoes, you know. So my point here is we have to learn to shut up and let processes happen, as women and as men, of course. And we could go on all day about this, but money and power, we have to be more comfortable with money and power. I know certainly young companies that I advise here at AO, you know, they say, well, you know, we can probably get away with $100,000 and then we'll be able to do okay. And it's like, no, be realistic. Ask for what you really need. And whether you're raising money for the company or, you know, selling your own services. And I think in each and every situation, if you're a woman looking to be involved in a technology company, but you're not a technical person, and this is going to cause some controversy, this statement, I think the fast track within a tech company, if you're not, you know, technically skilled, is sales. Sell. Get the money. Sell the product. Chief revenue officer, chief marketing officer is okay too, but chief revenue officer, make money flow into the company and you will have power. Gotta say, it's not necessarily the path that people are suggested to take all the time, but it's a very good one. Any thoughts on this whole idea of being in sales or direct revenue generation versus any other path into a good tech company? Anybody want to think about that?
Well, it's when a company is starting to, if they happen to be going down, they'll look at what costs them money and what's not bringing in money. And
Right.
that's where your HR, your PR, bing,
Yeah.
to do that a lot. But if you're showing that you're bringing in money, woohoo, you're sitting pretty. You might be one of the three
Right.
people left.
Right.
So I think that's I never even thought of that, Judy, but I think
It's
that's
a
a
fast
brilliant
Well,
suggestion.
thank you. You're pretty smart yourself.
It's true. You're a cost center or you're a revenue center. Which one do you want to be?
Yep.
You know, and this, I think whatever path you choose, whether it's a truly core technical role,
Right.
whether you decide marketing and PR or HR, whatever it is, I mean, if you can show your worth and your ROI to the company, you're not going anywhere. They'll keep you.
But it's really easy to show if you're in sales. I just sold a
Absolutely.
huge deal. Boom. And you're going to listen to me. Yeah, just saying.
Absolutely.
Amen.
It's just, I think it's, you know, nobody talks about it. I think it's the fast track for some, you know, if you're a woman and you're not sure and you're not trained as an engineer, you think, well, you know, I'd really like to work in technology, but I'm not sure how to enter into it. Learn about business, learn how to sell professionally, be valuable. What a concept. Be valuable and you'll be valued and they'll throw money at you. I mean, anyway, just want to throw it out there. Another, maybe one area I wanted to ask, I gave you each permission to tell a horror story. I don't want to end with that before we open it up for questions, but I do want to say, is there anything you've encountered that you feel is something you want to share, an experience you've had, or something that is illustrative of a reality that people should look at, think about, consider? Anybody?
Sure. Well, one thing I'm cognizant of, I have a daughter who's 9, turning 10, and I also have 2 sons, one that's 25 and one that's 22. And I think a lot about the differences in how they're raised. And I notice that my sons are quite confident to speak their minds, you know, and will confidently have a conversation. And I notice what happens with my daughter is that she's often interrupted.
Oh, yeah.
And I bring this up because I see it in my own home where, you know, the boys will interrupt her, I will interrupt her, you know, and not really think twice about it. But I would be less likely to interrupt my husband or my sons. Then when I'm in the business situation, you know, I have been interrupted full on, mid-sentence, only by men and I would say, you know, I don't have a lot of horror stories, but it is my pet peeve. Don't interrupt me in the middle of my thoughts and, you know, what I am trying to bring to the table.
Yep.
Because if you do, you will hear it and about it.
Okay.
And I think that's one of the things. And so I'll bring it back to my daughter, and I'm very cognizant now of when we do interrupt her, and I actually apologize and hold other people accountable for interrupting her. And so
I would consider that applied assertiveness.
yeah.
Yeah, applied assertiveness.
So yeah, that's my horror story.
All right. So that's a very good one. I mean, because as we talk about these things, others can relate and say, yeah, that was mine, and it's good to hear how other people handle it.
Yeah.
Either of you got one to talk about?
I'm pleasingly horror story free.
Excellent.
But I definitely do, hear you on that. Like the ways in which we're sort of, taught to behave and yes, some of those differences there. What sounds kind of wonderful to me is also that you're pointing it out to your sons, so it doesn't just become like your daughter's problem too. Be more assertive, but then this will make them better sons.
No,
too.
they need to be aware.
That's
So raising awareness for all of them.
yeah, delightful.
My last thing I would want to say about that is don't be an asshole when you get your first job. I know that's being a bit to the point.
Okay.
But you'd be surprised how many people come in and they go, I got it together, like I'm so cool. And everyone hates working with them. The best thing you can do is stick with the good people that work well. Don't be with the people that go, oh, you know what she said. Stick with the good, solid crew. And again, come in early, leave late, and pay your dues. Be respectful. And I know in school it was, you were like cool, you're really tough if you're like the misery in the corner. Well, if you're in school, and also think about your workplace, if you're working, think about the jerk that you're having to work with or having to go to school with. Everyone knows them. They're not going to go far. Stick with the winners, because everyone knows who the winner is in that group too. And maybe you're kind of like fed up that they always get the gold ring. Watch, observe, and follow their lead.
Okay. Yeah, good. What I'm hearing in some small ways that no one can take advantage of you without your permission, to quote Eleanor Roosevelt. And we all give away our power because we're compromising. We give away our power because we feel we're not nice. Men and women do it, but mostly women. Because we're not being nice, or they won't like me, or, oh, gee, that's too tough. Well, I say BS to that. Remember, it's not a hobby and it's not a popularity contest, it's business. It's a business world. Or if you're in a nonprofit, it's trying to get an end result. And that's a business too in its own way. So the ultimate thing is you can't get it done unless you develop the emotional maturity to get it done and to ask for what's needed, to use your resources best. And those resources are also internal as well as external. So, I'm kind of hearing a whole bunch of that. We are way more vulnerable than we think, but the good news is we're way stronger than we think, and we can do most anything in tech that our male colleagues can do, and probably a whole bunch more. So I think I want to just put out there the concept of the collective strength as well as the individual strength, and maybe ask any of you, do you have situations you're dealing with? Do you have realities you're dealing with? Do you have questions that you'd like us to address? Basically, let's just do a group thing. Is there anything you want to talk about? And oh, by the way, it's just us here. Well, and your cousins.
And the cameras, yeah.
And Dave. And Dave. But seriously, there's got to be some things. We're opening the kimono here. We're talking about some of the things we've been through. We're here for you, really. It's not about us. It's about you all. And it's about raising the consciousness level as well as the effectiveness level of our organizations. It's not about our stories. It's mostly about you. We wouldn't be here otherwise. We'd be having a glass of wine, which we'll probably do later. So I think I just want to open the floor to general conversation. I know nobody's going to want to start.
I want to start.
All right. I like you already. What's your name?
My name's Shannon Dewick, and
Hello, Shannon Dewick.
Hi, I'm Shannon Dewick.
You get
Whoa.
points for standing up.
I'm
and you
really
might want to
loud.
hold that further.
I also am a lean-in person. I run the local lean-in circle here for Kelowna that helps women advance themselves personally, professionally, and anywhere we need to go. So I'm really a fan of that Get on the Rocket ship.
And what's your comment?
My question, no, not a comment. My question is, I loved what you had to say about the sales. I was wondering, is there a particular book or resource that you think would help us to become better closers? Because I feel like I'm fantastic in my presentation, and then maybe it's the money thing or maybe it's not, but I want to become a better closer. So do you have a recommendation for that?
I got to think about that, actually, because there's about 9 titles running through my head. You know, I hate to say this, but the classic Xerox sales training that upon which everything has been derived is probably the very best. And I've been trained deeply in negotiation, so it's hard. It's like being an expert skier and trying to remember how to snowplow. You forget the basic moves. But I think in this situation, the key to closing is understanding the other person's benefit and your need to get a profit from that. So it's always what is, and then I'll give you a recommendation. What is their best situation, and how can you extract the value out of it that you need? So in essence, it's a win-win. So what is the most appropriate win-win? And really, you don't need a book for that. You just don't. It's a mindset. I'll have to think about it, and if you give me your card, I have a couple of ideas, but negotiation skills. Whatever gives you excellent empathy, deal empathy, without bowing too much and giving too much away is going to help you. So, yeah, you bet. I see a hand back there. What's your name?
I'm going to stand up. She set a precedent.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I'm standing up. She set a precedent. My name is Lisa, and you're absolutely right. You're either an asset or a liability.
Absolutely.
Hands down, no questions asked. Perfectly. Yes, go into sales.
Yep.
That's actually how I got into more the technical side of things,
Right.
and it's job security. My question is, how do you stop people talking over you, aside from a baseball bat?
What do you mean by over you? Can you define that a little better? Unpack that?
What you were talking about earlier, you know, you're telling a story, you're doing something, and then somebody jumps in, and their intentions are good, they're agreeing with you, and I have to admit it's a pet peeve. It's like, I have the microphone, shut up.
So before we get an answer to that, unpack how you feel. Do you feel disrespected?
Frustrated.
Frustrated because you're not being heard,
Yep.
or you're being disregarded? Okay,
Yep.
So that's the ultimate thing we want to deal with.
Yes, and then this burning need to be polite.
Yeah. Any comments on this?
So I trained myself and continue to train myself to actually acknowledge the interruption by saying something along the lines, you know what? That's a great idea. We're going to get to that in a sec. I'm just going to finish my thought. And, you know, it's pretty blatant, and a lot of times I've seen people kind of go, oh, right, oops, sorry. But I think when you feel that frustration, transparency is really important. I think you need to bring awareness to it, because I don't think it happens out of ill intent. I think it's just something that happens, and until attention is brought to it in a positive manner, there's not going to be any change.
So I have a suggestion. As Karen points out so aptly, it's a bad habit. But it leaves you feeling disrespected, disempowered, and like crap, essentially. So ultimately, I urge you to do 2 things. One is use the principles of neuro-linguistic programming, where you move your hand and just say, hang on, can we park that here? And we'll get right back to it. I was talking about this, and, you know, whatever. Just acknowledge, park, and continue. So don't deny it or get triggered or get emotionally triggered. Just find a way to park it and return to it, so that you both feel like it's still happening and you're acknowledged, but you take command. Do you see what my hands are doing? Did you notice what my hands were doing, and you felt like you really had to pay attention to what my hands were doing just now? So that's what I mean. Just really be calm about it. Don't let it upset you. Just, it's not permanent. And take command of it. No one can take that power away from you if you just don't let it. It takes a bit of practice, and you'll come across as a jerk a couple of times. That's fine. but just say, let's park that. We'll get right back to that. I was talking about this. Okay, great. Now let's go back to the thing. And really look at them when it's time for them to talk to you. And you may be able to re-educate that habit, but it's really just a nasty habit mostly. Yeah. Good one.
I've used the term, especially when I'm with someone that I know has that habit, and I'm going to use the vehicle analogy as well. I just say, "Oh, I'm driving the bus now," and that it kind of jars them into going, "Oh yeah," and then they'll listen.
You're right. I interrupted. Yeah.
It's nice because it gives people a chance to like reflect, but it's not name calling. You know, it's just just say like, oh, they may not even recognize that they're doing it, but if you just point it out gently, there'll be space to finish. And
that's how much coffee they had too. And some people just. Okay, so I can see all of you. The hands are going up all over the room.
Hey, I have a bit of a casual
What's your name,
question.
please?
Oh, my name is Maddie Peacock. I work at Community Sift with
Awesome.
Karen, actually.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how you all got started in the tech industry, what your first jobs were,
Oh my God.
what your end goal was at the time.
You know, I was afraid of that question. Do you want me to start or do you want me to go after? All right. I'm trained as a biochemist. I know drugs, so I don't do them. Much. I trained as a biochemist, and I was going to medical school, and the computers in the labs were crap, as they often were before UBC got onto its big program of getting lots of money, and I was the only one that seemed to be able to fix them. So when I decided during first year of medical school not to be a doctor because I didn't like sick people, I didn't know what to do with myself. I know, it's good insight, right? I didn't know what to do with myself, so I started, I lied to a company and said I knew a little bit about computers, which is a total lie. And I got into sales, actually, funnily enough, and I was awesome at it. But the way I got into that was I had some knowledge of computers, and so I had to dig myself out of the hole I created, learning to never lie again because it was too painful, and accidentally discovered a real affinity to computers and technology, and more importantly to problem solving, to matching a technical solution to a business problem, a set of business problems. Didn't realize I had that. I guess in the background the universe was telling me to go there, but so that was my accidental discovery of tech. That's how I got into it. Yeah.
I got into animation, you know, the classic way. I was a chef on film. Burnt my hand. I was in live action films.
Wow.
I was a teamster. I know, you see it, right? I worked on MacGyver. Okay, so that's, you got the cobwebs are happening. Thank you. He's horrible, by the way. Oh, God. No, I didn't say that. I was just teasing. Anyway, I needed a job. I burnt my hand. I needed a job. And my friend said, oh, my boyfriend needs an assistant. And there I was at International Rocket Ship. And my desk was a door on 2 milk crates. Oh, sorry, 4 milk crates. And I brought my computer in. Okay, I brought my computer in. They all were like, take that away. They just got a thermal paper, fax machine.
Wow.
And we used pencils. So to get to your nightmare story, all the pencils needed sharpening. Anyway, and then, just worked hard and showed that I loved what I did. And
That's
the
how you
rest
got
is
in there.
history.
I just went from there. Okay. Interesting.
So mine goes back to high school, actually. I went to high school in the 80s, and sorry, and
We're getting into true confessions. This could get good.
it is what it is, Judy. I went to school in the 80s, and at that time, it was the very first programming class. I took the very first programming class that my school offered. It was all boys and me. It was my best grade. I loved it, and I could have spent all of my schooling there. And of course, at the time, there wasn't that. And if you go back to that time, the jobs that are today weren't even on the horizon at the time. But that always stuck with me. So after school, I went and I worked in festivals and administration, and I had the fortunate experience of going down to California and working at the University of Southern California for an eminent professor. It turned out he was the chief scientist for the U.S. government, and he was the father of software engineering. I didn't know any of this at the time. I was his administrative assistant, and he was phenomenal. And he said, "Wow, you really, you have an affinity for tech." And he allowed me to grow my skills and my education around that. And just from there, it just took off. I went into training and then had a very strong and passionate feeling that there should be more women doing this. So.
Can I just ask you what school you went to? Because I think that we should give a shout out to the schools that encourage technology in their programming.
Well, it was the University of Southern California.
But prior to that, the high school?
Oh, really? Sure, it was Garden City High School in Winnipeg.
Garden City!
Yo the peg. Wow, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Well, I went to high school in the 90s. No. I had sort of a technology false start, or I should have had a totally different career in that I had a radio show at Ottawa U for 2 years, and I thought whoa, radio, that is what I want to do. And we were using 8-tracks and splicing tape by hand, and we got a MIDI machine. Just as I was leaving, and I was super cutting edge. This is so great. This is what I want to do with my whole life. And so I went to Ryerson Polytechnic University. It was just as it was becoming a university in Toronto to take their radio and television arts program, which now would be podcasting and streaming, Netflix and other people chilling, that kind of thing. And there actually there I was learning to design forced listening contests and sort of some practices that just didn't get me out of bed with a song on my lips. We weren't splicing as much tape anymore or doing as much of the hands-on kind of stuff. But I did take this English class with a big critical theory component that just opened up my eyes to these whole new ways of thinking. We worked out how criminals are created by this. Is it blew my mind. And so I ended up being sort of siphoned off into English, and only came back to doing kind of technical stuff when I was working on a project that was digitizing 1890s periodicals to make them more accessible to folks. Things that there are only 2 existing copies in the world, and you have to go to either to Texas or to the British Library to see them. And I ended up working with a team, because the 1890s are kind of my specialty, digitizing this stuff, and really got back into tech so that I could make the things I wanted to make, rather than sort of waiting for companies like Gale Cengage to or Microsoft to build the things we wanted. We worked on educating ourselves, working together as humanists to build the kind of resources we want. So that's what's behind something like the Lesbian and Gay Liberation in Canada project, where there's no sort of commercial value in queer history preservation and cultural transmission, but if it's something we want to do, we can learn how to do it. And so the technology became a facilitator. I didn't know I would also love the tech for its own sake, but caring about the content made me come to love the tech side of things. Yeah.
Interesting. We all have such different stories. And you asked the question, I personally, my career, as I mentioned, I only talked at the beginning, but I know you're trying to gain some insights into career paths. And for me, for example, my career was the random walk of a drunk in a windstorm. It just had it has had no particular flow, and yet I'm in this incredibly powerful position. Did you get what you were looking for from our conversation?
You're
and
doing
what
the right
heck
thing
was
too.
that?
It's the ask everyone how they got the job they had.
Yeah.
That's a great strategy, too, because I think most people are like this.
Yeah, well, most people it's what you plan, and then there's a snarl where you are. Mm-hmm. You're going to say something?
Just that don't be afraid to take opportunity when you see it. I mean,
okay.
I think everybody. I mean, you're joking that you're on this tangled path to lead you to where you are. But I think for the most part, for those of us who are advanced in our careers, that's how it is, right? Opportunity presents itself, and if it is exciting, go for it. Don't hold back. It's going to take you. Every path leads you somewhere, and you know what? If it turns out you don't like the path you're on, pick a different one.
I'm fond of saying that every one of us in our work lives. Every one of us at our work lives is at a confluence of technology, society, the economy, your demographic state, and stuff that goes bump in the night. Where that all mixes in the middle, that's where we are in our careers. and how risk averse or risk friendly you are can make the difference between really doing something friggin' awesome or going, I'm not so comfortable, or you may not have the opportunity. You may be constrained by things that cannot be affected, but every one of us is at this interesting confluence every day. In fact, every company is at that interesting confluence every day, and sometimes it just pays to sit there and go, okay, what are all the forces that work on me in my work in technology? It's not just the tech sector, obviously. Bree, what's our timing on this?
Can I just add one thing to that question? Sorry, I just have to, compelled. I think you have to be, for me, I have to be incredibly grateful that my DNA is here, and there's people on the other side of the world, and perhaps beside me, figuratively speaking, that are going through hell. They don't have opportunities. I say, also for my bloodline, everyone who's come before me, who brought me here, I owe it to them to take a risk. So I don't care what, if it comes to travel, someone says, let's go to Spasm, I go. Or wherever. And that's, I think, what led me here. I've never said no to an opportunity.
That's good for you. That's good. Your question. Well, who are you, please?
My name's Nicole Karubi.
Hello, Nicole.
Recently, I had to leave the workforce because I had a baby. That was
Yay!
an awesome experience, right? And I came back and I
now
constantly
you're
was
working harder than
battling
ever.
to get going again.
Yes, of course.
And one of my mentors said to me, who happened to be male, it's not what you used to be able to do, but what you can do now.
Totally.
Moving forward. And I'm just wondering if you guys, just in this experience, had a mentor or someone, or even just in yourselves, took on a saying that really propelled you forward as to where you are now. Is there something that really resonates with you to go, if I could remember back to when I was struggling, what got me going?
So you're asking, did we have mentors, or did we have an inspirational saying from those
Just
mentors?
something that inspired you. Not
Something
necessarily a
that
mentor,
inspired
but
us.
it could have come from a mentor, I guess.
To eat, and I'm not being facetious. That's what inspired me. I took 3 years off work, so and I thought I'll put my baby into daycare once she can talk, so I know if she's going through any problems. My husband was getting his master's degree, and we were living on in a co-op. We're splitting a potato between us, really, Tim and I. So truly, it was just survival. And fortunately, I went for the job. It fell in my lap. I phoned everyone I knew that was in what I wanted to go back into animation. I said, if you hear of an opportunity, tell me. And I also can't be paid dirt because I'm looking after 3 mouths. So it was survival, tenacity, and connections. So meet people, be cool, seriously, so they will. The person beside you may be hiring you tomorrow. So keep your connections healthy.
Okay.
So I have a mentor, and she's pretty phenomenal. And, actually one of the things that she said to me recently that I found pretty life-changing is I did tell her that I get stuck in fear, and she broke down fear for me. So false expectations appearing real. And as maybe as minor as that sounds, it really is life-changing. If you can take whatever you're afraid of and unpack it and look at it from different perspectives, you disarm it. And so then you can move forward. So if you're afraid of not, finding the job you want, break it apart. Why are you afraid? What's holding you back? Realize that fear isn't permanent. It's only in the moment. And so if you can set it down and move past it, you're going to be able to accomplish really awesome things.
You're welcome. I didn't know it had hit you that hard.
Yes. She's my mentor.
You're getting wine later.
That is a good mentor and sponsors are definitely worth their weight
Maybe
in
you're my
gold.
sponsor.
Oh, jeez.
Open doors a
Write
little bit.
checks too. I don't know about that.
Who know to think of you when you have opportunities? I must say I feel like I only have one aphorism, which may not be super useful in this case, but that that people generally won't remember what you say, but they will remember how you made them feel, you know, and that does then shape the kind of opportunities they may, you know, kind of offer you. Yeah.
God, I've got two. And I spend a lot of time working with people, so I have to be very clear in what's going on in my own head, which isn't always possible, but you know what it's like. There's two. One, I'm French, so the first one is French. It's La vie c'est l'amour et le travail. Life is work and love. And it's a modification of Sigmund Freud's Leben und Arbeiten, which is what he said, life is work and love. And to me, I do both with abandon. Whatever the hobby is, whatever the relationship is, whatever the work is, I do it full on. And if you get in my way, you kind of get run over. It's just how it is. But the other one is an old aphorism. Speaking of aphorisms, you reminded me, what you resist persists and usually gathers force. Think about it. The shit you don't deal with gets smellier. Sorry. So, you know, those are the two that kind of, corporately as well as personally, I don't know if those are helpful, but it's life and work. Life is love and work, and you know what you resist persists and usually gathers force. And if you think about it, those things kind of apply. I did have an extraordinary mentor. He was a man, and an East Indian man who ran a company called Install Shield and was terrifically helpful to me. I met him in an airport, and he was an amazing mentor and didn't care if I was male or female or orange, and was really responsible for a lot of the maturity and seasoning for me as an executive. So yeah, I had a mentor. The bottom line is, I think I'll close with this. We all have an everyday, whether it's work or relationships, it's a dance of vulnerability. How vulnerable are we going to make ourselves to the world, to random chance, to each other, to our partners, to our family, to our own laziness or inertia, you know, to the forces of change in the world? How vulnerable are we going to be, and how grateful and aware are we going to be to the things that are actually going on in our lives? And if you're working in a technology company, you're bloody lucky. You're bloody lucky. Let's face it. And yet, it feels very vulnerable at times, you know. So it's always a dance of vulnerability and strength. And for you, coming back to the workforce, always look at your strengths, because you're going to pay attention to your weaknesses, and never forget that what you think about the most is what you become the most. So the more you think about, oh geez, these are the areas I really need to work on, and I'm not so good there, boom, that's what you think about. That's what you become more of. Try to park them over to one side, maybe gloss over a little, maybe throw a tea towel on it and forget about it, and go where you're strong and dig there. That's what you become more of. And I think, you know, that's just a little comment to answer your question. I hope it does.
What kind of job are you looking for?
Yeah, talk to her.
Do you want to tell us or no?
Come on. Okay, no worries.
Okay.
I don't know what our timing is because I'm too busy having fun here, but we want to wrap it up.